1776, a 23-year-old German woman dies at the hands of the devil. Anneliese Michel, after months of painful exorcisms, passes away from malnutrition and severe dehydration. Anneliese believed she was possessed by a legion of demons, and that only the will and word of the Lord could set her free. I propose a cosmogony to you, a beginning of all things. Uncreated, we suppose the zero, in one of its Greek senses, the chaos, not disorder, a later connotation that has fossilized in our language, but the void, not of non-existence, but rather the infinite, the abyssal, the yawning opening without beginning or end, thus lying beyond our human comprehension. Then the zero becomes fertile with the one, the seed of everything that would come to be, formless, incapable of knowing itself by the division of opposing pairs, cold, heat, north, south, past, future, subject, object, which in this first moment are but one. Next comes the first great split, and from it comes duality, the one divided into two. Thus the parallel and contrary forces emerge. Light is separated from darkness, good from evil. We then arrive at the appearance of opposition. This, in my humble opinion, would be the very first definition that prefigures the devil, amorphous and without a proper name, the opposing adversarial force, opposed to something or someone. Let us search for the devil in every corner, and for now, let's go back in time. We have now in our hands the thesis and the antithesis. Focusing, due to cultural proximity, on Greek mythology, we will seek to know if he was already present there. Let us define some essential concepts to better understand the difference between our modern view and the ancient worldview. In the year 2024 of your Lord, a demon is interpreted as an entirely malevolent spirit, inclined to and even eager for malevolent acts. However, in ancient paganism, in its broadest sense, a daimon, an original Greek word, was more commonly seen as an intermediate supernatural being between the world of the immortal gods and that of human beings. A daimon could act freely for good or for evil, helping or hindering the poor human who crossed its path. A being, we should understand, of a much more ambiguous character than the current and colloquial demon. In the Greek context, demonic did not represent an ontological distinct dichotomy, pure good against impure evil, a benefactor angel versus a malevolent demon. The plot of the drama more commonly resulted from a contention of powers, a conflict of interests, pride, and egos. Transgression was the demonic act. Offense, betrayal, disobedience, and the abhorrent hubris were the sins, the acts to be rectified and punished. However, in the Greek pantheon, one would hardly find someone akin to Satan, the Prince of Darkness. Let us not forget that the Olympian gods themselves could be terrifyingly wicked and vengeful, as well as piously benevolent and beneficent. In this polytheism, as in many others, evil and good coexisted in the same nature, in the immortals, in the daimons, and in humans, without reaching the metaphysical dimensions of absolute good and evil. In accepting this premise, perhaps our Hellenic ancestors did not feel the need to concentrate evil in a single entity. Light and darkness were and are in everything and everywhere. It is important to emphasize that within classical mythology, it would not be correct to simplify religious views that spanned millennia in just a few lines. For the sake of conciseness, I intend to highlight the ambiguous nature of Hellenic polytheism, which contrasts with the much more rigid and narrow duality popular in Judeo-Christian monotheism. It seems, then, that there is no devil to be found in Greek mythology. We could mention the Minotaur with its fierce imagery of a horned beast inhabiting the heart of fear and danger. Thus the Minotaur, lurking in silence, silently leaps upon our life with the vital vehemence of an insatiable monster. But even the Minotaur is a result of transgressions and perverse acts. His heart does not harbor the spark of evil any more than a wolf that devours its prey to satisfy its hunger. However, there is a curious character who, hundreds of years in advance, prefigures an attitude of pity and sympathy for a rebellious being opposed to the divine tyranny. We speak of Prometheus. Son of the Titan Iapetus, from a defeated generation prior to the Olympian generation, Prometheus never accepted the defeat of his father and brothers. Harboring resentment and disdain toward the Olympians and a greater love for human beings, helping them several times against the punishments of Zeus. Perhaps the most famous and celebrated episode is the theft of the sacred fire from Zeus and its gift to humans. Zeus, the god king, enraged with Prometheus, condemned him to be chained to the Caucasus and have his liver devoured every day. This myth allows for various interpretations. On one hand, Prometheus is a satanic figure, perhaps the first proper one. In Hesiod's Theogony, Prometheus, a divine being connected to human relations, freely rebels against the imposed order. He is seen as a challenger of the reigning god's will, thereby assuming the role of an opponent and adversary. He prefigures the diabolic force that contradicts laws. However, notably, by aiding or interfering with humanity, depending on the perspective, he grants knowledge and progress to humans. This mirrors the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which incites the discovery of good and evil and initiates the time and progress of civilization. And now, dear viewers and listeners, we will, for the first time, encounter the character who brings us together here. Quoting José F. Durán Velasco, the evolution of Israelite religion was long and very complex, Although Rabbinic Judaism, after the destruction of the Second Temple, insisted on its perfect continuity from the theophany of Mount Sinai to today, this theological idea makes no sense to a secular historian. As secular historians, we must consider that from the Israelite religion to classical Judaism to Christianity, there was a long transition of worship from polytheism to monolatry and finally to monotheism. The question of evil also evolved incessantly, taking new forms and making new conjectures from century to century about its existence and its action in the cosmos. When we arrived at monotheism, we were faced with a disquieting question, especially for modern sensibilities, about the origin of evil and its power. In classical Judaism, formed after the destruction of the Second Temple, we find a rejection of the concept of fallen angels, which was previously widely accepted. The divine omnipotence in absolute monotheism does not admit or permit an anti-God, or, we might say, an adversary, an opponent of divine rank. Satan in Judaism is an angel belonging to the heavenly court of the one God, and acts in full accordance with the Lord's designs. He does not stumble, fall, or sin. If he inflicts suffering and causes doubt, it is with the permission of God the Father. A fundamental element often forgotten in modern times is that Satan only acts with God's approval, accepting that our Creator Father, the good God, consents to diabolical misdeeds is at the very least disconcerting, and various solutions have been proposed to calm us in the face of such a harsh, insensitive and cruel progenitor. The word Satan is used in Jewish sacred texts of the Tanakh. Its meaning in Hebrew translates to the accuser, the enemy, the adversary, and it could be used to describe anyone exhibiting those characteristics without any demonic or negative connotation. As a harmful tempter, he first appears in Chronicles 21:1 when he incites David to conduct a census of Israel. However, as a distinct entity, well-defined and committing actions that seem cruel to us, he is only revealed in the famous book of Job. Job was a wealthy, honorable, faithful and God-fearing man with 7 sons and 3 daughters. One day the angels presented themselves before God Almighty, and with them came another angel, Satan, the adversary. God is pleased with Job, his servant, so kind and faithful. However, Satan argues that Job's goodness and submissiveness are due to the blessings God has given him. If God were to strike him, Job would reject his Lord and his glory. Almighty God, perhaps fearing a false love, tells Satan, "Everything he has is in your power, but you must not lay a hand on him." Poor Job loses all his joys and greatness. From his children to his flocks, torn by suffering, he cries out to the heavens, but remains faithful to God. Satan presents himself again before the Lord and argues, "Skin for skin, a man will give all he has for his life." God the Father allows Satan to inflict terrible sores all over Job's body, but Job does not curse God. "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" says Job. Job suffers and utters harsher words to God, but does not betray his faithfulness. Satan loses the case. Here we can see that Satan operates as an inspector in the heavenly court, an angel tasked with testing humans and assessing their righteousness. He will have little importance in the Jewish sacred texts. It is in the Christian Bible that the adversary becomes the great arch-enemy of humans and the supreme rival of Jesus. When the Bible was translated into Greek, Satan became Diabolos, and in this translation from one language to another, the word acquired a more negative connotation. Along with the previously mentioned qualities of the adversary, it added traits such as slanderer, deceiver, and liar. Christian demonology will distinguish itself from Jewish and Islamic views by conceiving angels as celestial beings capable of error. Christian angels can feel lust, disobey, rebel, and revolt against the forces of God. The Christian reading of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, also informs and fosters the image of a terrifying dragon or beast that wreaks havoc on earth and in the heavens, a catalyst of evil and darkness. In Revelation 12:3-4, it is mentioned a great dragon that swept a third of the stars from the sky, fallen angels. Revelation 12:7-9 also describes a great battle in which this dragon, with his fallen angels, fights against the archangel Michael and his angelical host. All these references converged with the idea of Satan, the devil, master of evil, lord of darkness, and holder of lies. Indeed, a biblical narrative that originally had no relation to the devil will be interpreted with a demonic undertone. In Isaiah 14:12-15, the Latin name Lucifer appears, used here as an epithet, quoting, "How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning." In this context, it refers to the planet Venus, the brightest star in the sky, bearer of light, or in Latin, Luci, light, fer, bearer. From this reference, we can construct a mythological character who was once one of the most beautiful and radiant angels of God, but who fell due to his hubris and was expelled from the exalted and divine place where he dwelt with the Lord to the dark and gloomy abysses of the earth. Thus we obtain the essential theme of the fall: insubordination, adversarial opposition, and rebellion against the Creator King, the ultimate and supreme ruler. We also observe the origins of his three main Catholic names: Satan from Hebrew, Devil from Greek, and Lucifer from Latin. These interpretations and mythological elaborations are insufficient for a satisfactory reconstruction of the genealogy of evil. This is a question that the Church Fathers are compelled to address but are unable to definitively answer. Consider this: Satan is a creature originally pure, born from the presence of the Lord, and belongs to the heavenly council, as seen in Job. Later, he opposes God, causing his own fall and curse. If God is the sole architect of the cosmos, then evil must have been created by him. Did Satan already possess the capacity for evil from birth? And what about the other fallen angels? Did they also possess this same capacity? Even if Satan represents the entry of malevolence into the universe, who created it? Who painted that shadow on his heart? The cause of evil in the world is difficult to answer when worshipping a good God who embodies all goodness and compassion. Without a definitive answer, demons proliferate. The presence of malevolent demons in the New Testament is vast compared to the Old Testament. Jesus becomes the protagonist in several exorcism stories, casting out unclean spirits from afflicted victims. Notably, Satan stands out as the chief and leading representative of these rebellious and wretched spirits, harmful overseers that poison life with their malevolent deeds. Satan is the one who will tempt Jesus in his desert retreat, thus definitively establishing his preeminence in the hierarchy of demonic powers. We have already traveled through the creation of the world, the emergence of a negative force, ambiguous spirits, malignant spirits, and the king of unclean spirits. Have we found then the devil? In part, we have his name or names, but his characterization is still quite vague. Seeking more answers, we will follow the path laid by Robert Muchembled in his book A History of the Devil between the 12th century and the 20th century. Robert informs us that Satan's powerful entry into the moral and social framework of Western culture was relatively late. During the first Christian millennium, the devil had a somewhat discreet and calm existence. He tells us, quoting, "It was only around the 12th or 13th century that certain elements decisively coalesced into precise representations and practices, giving rise to a terrible and obsessive imagery by the end of the Middle Ages." End quote. It is important to remember that Christianity did not impose itself overnight. There was a long, gradual Christianization process full of meanders, pagan assimilations, resistance, and syncretisms. Thus, the devil transformed itself time and again until church authorities, and not only them but poets and artists who also played a part, focused on the subject and sought more precise measures for this fascinating character. In the early days, Christian theologians had intellectually defined him as a demoted archangel, a sort of flying being floating through the air, followed by demons. By the end of the first Christian millennium, for example, we have an interesting yet rather uninspiring description of the devil, voiced by the monk Raoul Glaber, who claimed to have seen him 3 times in his life. We quote his first experience. "One night, before the dawn, I saw, appearing before me right at the foot of my bed, a kind of misshapen dwarf. From what I could see, it was a being of small stature with an extremely thin neck, a pale face with very dark eyes, a very straight but faintly defined chin, a goat-like beard, hairy and pointed ears, bristly hair, dog-like teeth, a pointed skull, a puffed-up chest, a corpulent back, a festering tail, and filthy clothes." This devil is by no means the seductive figure of the Romantics, nor is he terrifying or instilling an indescribable fear. He is, so to speak, a poor devil. He seems to embody a blend of old European traditions, we might say folkloric elements, part animalistic and part human, evoking images of goblins, dwarfs, and trolls. Poor devils, again, reflecting the negative and opposite side to the purity of monastic life, particularly in this case, but lacking an inherently malevolent essence. There appears to be something of the mischievous nature, adverse but without significant consequences for mortal men, reminiscent of a certain treacherous childishness. It is important to remember that until the 12th century, the character and attributes of the devil were not yet fully structured to offer a uniform and coherent image of a powerful evil lord, lord of lies, prince of darkness, and king of hell. As such, from region to region, from land to land, the devil would adopt local forms and customs. In the 16th century, for example, the animalistic aspect of the devil remained prevalent. Martin Luther, the father of Protestantism, believed that the devil could assume various animal forms: lions, dragons, serpents, goats, pigs, dogs, multicolored caterpillars, and especially flies. These ultimately alluding to excrement, pestilence, and what is nauseating, filthy, and unclean. It is worth adding a note about the figure of the poor devil. This designation reminds us that such imps, like the one mentioned earlier, were actors in thousands of stories in theatres and popular tales. In these stories, when they attempted to deceive someone, they often ended up being outwitted and tricked by human wisdom. This theme of deceiving the darkness with a clever act was a peculiar way of dealing with anxieties about sin and punishment and suffering in the afterlife. This depiction of the imp, so banal, so crude and worthy of mockery, will remain present in popular culture for a long time, if it ever disappeared, and serves us as a reminder not to draw too strict a line regarding the psychosocial history of peoples. Now, discussing his habitat. The devil's realm was, and still is, the night, opposed to the divine light which embraced the whole earth during the day. In the twilight and darkness, the devil seemed more comfortable, away from the luminous gaze of God. Desolate and cold places, damp caves, and nocturnal animals were associated with his presence and dominion. A part of the pantheon of fear, the depiction of the devil was also influenced by pagan gods of death, especially those of Germanic origin, such as the wild hunts, stemming from beliefs in the flight of demons led by their chief, followed by demonic hounds who abducted the dead and carried them to their final resting place. It is worth emphasizing once again that theologians from their isolated towers apart from the common people were intellectually conceiving a place and a reason for the devil. But outside, the Christian devil shared his realm of fear and anguish with a medieval world enchanted by hundreds of other frightening things, which prevented the absolute dominion of Satan. Quote, however, the moment was approaching when a vigorous Christian offensive would impose its order, forcing humans to read the world exclusively in black and white. End quote. An effort to unify identity based on being Christian, being a believer, would sweep across Europe. The Western world of the last 4 centuries of the Middle Ages was, above all, Christian, something that promoted a certain unification through beliefs, customs, and practices. The struggle against heretics, outcasts, heathens, and those outside the embrace of God would result in a dichotomy, us versus them, exacerbated by emerging theories of centralized and centralizing political sovereignty. The mentality of the inner group versus the outer group would pave the way for unity and a distancing from plurality. In this unity, there was no room for those who differed, us versus them, good versus evil. In this ultimate and binary struggle, Satan could finally rule, with his head held high, powerful, odious, terrifying and majestic. A throne is erected for the despot of the world, the Lord of Darkness. From around the 14th century onwards, signs of Lucifer's power became more pronounced. In art, his stature increased, making him literally taller than other demons. He often appeared seated and, more exceptionally, wore a crown, a monstrous king of a tumultuous and torturous hell. The devil moved from occupying a metaphorical space to embodying a more tangible, sinister, and frightening figure. His presence had a profound impact on the faithful, driving them to confession through fear. This fear became essential in enforcing a submissive social cohesion. God and the devil share an essential trait. They are spiritual in nature and physically unreachable. However, new ideas about the human body allowed the devil to approach and cross the infernal threshold to act in the physical space. Joyce E. Salisbury notes in her book The Beast Within that by the late Middle Ages, the perception of what separates humans from animals shifted. There was a reconfiguration of the association between wild animals and our inner animality, giving rise to a fear of the inner beast capable of nullifying human rationality, clouding spiritual purity, and leaving only irrational impulses like lust, hunger, and wrath. We've all heard that the flesh is weak, and the devil gained access to humans through their weakness, their sinful hearts tainted with unspeakable, shameful, and dark desires. Satan would corrode the divine creation from within, rotting its roots and poisoning its fruits. This vision of an inner animality would merge with fears and condemnations of bestiality, unnatural sexual acts, and culminate in the perverse imagery of black masses and Sabbaths, where initiates, witches, and wizards gathered to make pacts with the devil, often depicted in animal forms such as a black goat or a cat, and commit acts of the utmost atrocity such as infanticide, cannibalism, and breaking taboos like incest and sodomy in a complete debauchery and mockery of divine order. Indeed, witches and wizards were condemned to death, but it was women who, perhaps unsurprisingly, given the deeply ingrained misogyny of Western culture, came to occupy the pinnacle of the hierarchy of wrongdoers. As noted, quoting, the Bible in effect establishes a connection and parallel between death, sin, the devil, and Eve. She introduces all of them into the world. End quote. The witch hunts, often mistakenly associated with the medieval period, but more precisely initiated in the early modern era, starting from the 15th century, resulted in the deaths of thousands of innocent lives. These witch trials in the 16th century fed into the demonology of the time. They were seen as proof positive of the presence of demonic forces in the world, shifting the cosmic battle between good and evil from the celestial spheres to the center of human experience. God, saints, and angels fought against the devil in this new battleground. Each person became a battlefield, and every human was a potential gateway for Satan to enter our world. In the 17th century, Baroque art, as if drawn by a vortex, captivated by the fascination with darkness, witnessed the emergence of the devil at the core of its imagination, with pedagogical aims. François de Rosset, Jean-Pierre Camus, and other French writers developed a tragic and satanic culture in literature, depicting the horrendous and ghastly vicissitudes that pervade the banality of everyday life. Punishment is ever present. Atonement for the sins is necessary, and God acts with the sting of Satan, enforcing the law and punishing the wicked. Following the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, one would expect that the devil's power would be diminished in the face of the pressures of reason, science, and industrialization. However, the evil one, like God, manages to hide in the cracks of superstitious thinking, in the gaps not yet mapped by scientific method. Now, having undergone a process of internalization, residing in our hearts as its throne, it is of little use for science to seek him in the external world. Nevertheless, I propose, as a form of comparison and contrast, a reflection from Umberto Eco in his book A History of Ugliness, in which the author links our fear of the devil to the fear of the universe, the unknowable and terrifying cosmos of H.P. Lovecraft, the unknown and amorphous, the extraterrestrial, contrary to any human aspect. Quote, confirms a tendency of human beings to represent what is odious as a formless being, always making its ultimate incarnation of the devil. End quote. However, I contend that this view only covers the aspect of fear and aversion inherent in the devil's character, but not the Catholic concepts of sin, guilt, and temptation that are inseparable from him. An alien may be a new devil, but not the devil. In the 20th century, the neurosis of having malevolence contained within us, our connection with animality, and the ferocity of primitive and instinctive drives, since we now understand that we have evolved through successive mutations rather than being created in a single act of divine grace, blurs the boundaries between the human and the demonic. The eternal unfolding of thoughts in psychoanalysis, the proliferation of interpretations, the awareness of the subjectivity and relativity inherent in existence, the disbelief and growth of secular thought, makes us literally the ultimate incarnation of the devil, or, perhaps, of evil. It exists as a name, concept, fear, myth, and symbol in our minds. Can there be malevolence beyond human experience, a devil outside our thoughts? The external devil, with its myriad of faces, facets, or antics, will continue to be present in our popular culture, as it always has been, but it resides increasingly in the literary and artistic sphere, transformed into a ghost, illusion, motif, or emblem, assuming a more playful and symbolic role. It is important to emphasize that these are generalizations of a multitude of beliefs across the vast Western world, with each country and nation having its own unique and particular relationship with the devil, with its own shades and nuances. However, in terms of broad generalizations, Robert Muchembled provides us with a distinction between Europe and the United States. Quote, we have on one side the countries of Protestant tradition, primarily the United States, which continue to fear the devil hidden within the sinful body, and on the other side, the Latin countries, where this fear, though real, does not have the same virulence or acuity. Perhaps we could suggest that old Europe has had more time to exercise the indescribable terror of the devil through fire and catharsis, and now is more concerned with the murky ambiguity of the human spirit, a vessel of fears, secrets, and terrible drives. Satan increasingly becomes a metaphor, and his reality fades. Having once reigned in a world divided into black and white, now the world is seen in 1,000 of shades of grey. Anneliese died at the hands of the devil. She had experienced severe psychiatric disorders since the age of 16, and after several years of ineffective treatments, she refused medical aid and requested an exorcism. Was the devil in the poor young woman's mind? The severe consequences attributed to the ritual led to a criminal trial by local prosecutors against Anneliese's parents and the exorcist priests, causing significant controversy throughout Europe. Both the priests who performed the exorcism and Anneliese's parents were convicted of negligent homicide for having refused medical treatment. Did the devil, or the idea of the devil, infest the minds of everyone involved? Did they conjure a non-existent being and made it a reality through actions and prayers? Anneliese's mother claimed, "God told us to exorcise the demons from my daughter. I do not regret her death." Where then is the devil? I would say, as an atheist, where God is. For many, the devil is as unreachable as God. For others, the devil is everywhere, just like God. For others still, in our hearts, much like God. Perhaps there are those who feel him beneath the earth, in that abyssal darkness which God looks down from heaven, from his blue abyss. There are also those who do not believe in him, and for them God no longer exists. Still, as long as the Christian paradigm dominates nations in the West, the devil will remain alive. For the devil is us. And you, dear listener and viewer, are you the devil? Let us know in the comment section below. Who knows, maybe I'll believe it. And while you're at it, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, I do have to apologize if I made any embarrassing grammatical error or any strange, suspicious pronunciation. English is not my first language, and I learn it quite late in life. Still, I hope you enjoy it and support us by subscribing and giving us a like. Thank you.